This is a public service announcement brought to you in part by AshMV. The video you are watching is a part 2, meaning certain references or explanations may not make sense without watching part 1. Note also that these videos are made working under the assumption that you have watched all 3 parts of AshMV's Every Eminem Album Ranked and Reviewed series, and understand Media Review Mike's general opinions on Eminem's work. Media Review Mike is not responsible for addressing comments from people who have failed to achieve aforementioned criteria. Upon clicking on this video, you have agreed not to leave any stupid comments. Anything else?
Yeah. Like and subscribe. Oh my gosh, guys, fine. I'll talk about the other albums. If you insist, just get off my back, guys. I'm doing it, okay? I'm doing it right now. Hey, I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it right now, guys. Chill. What is up, guys? Media Review Mike here. So, cards on the table. I was going to lock in and dedicate all of my AshMV time to the Sodaland review, as I promised that video back in January. See, it's like in my head, I've got 2 beats going at once. Both of them are in a tug of war trying to compete for my love, and I tell them to stop and that I love them both just as much, but then one of them says I should release an hour-long analysis of a Thomas the Tank Engine creepypasta, and the other says I should explain how I would remake the tracklist of a nearly 30-year-old rap album. And of those 2, I'm gonna do the one that takes less time. My previous video retooling the bad Eminem albums did well and has received nothing but unanimous praise. And since I'm in the business of milking the teat of Eminem for all it's worth until I run out of things to talk about, which is never, I figured I'd discuss the other albums that I didn't talk about in that video. Just a heads up, this part of the video is gonna be a lot of preamble regarding the response to the first video. If you're not interested in that, feel free to skip to this time code to get to the album analyses. However, by skipping the preamble, please recognize that you are legally waiving your right to leave me annoying comments. So choose wisely. This video is going to be mostly unscripted because these are all edits that I don't have a lot to say about, hence why they weren't included in the original video. I think that of all of these track lists, Recovery, The Mathers 2, and Music to Be Murdered By probably benefit the most from my edits, but all of them are at least slight improvements in my humble opinion. But before I jump into the edits, I want to address a few points brought up in the comments section of my first video. Now, I don't want to sit here and act like I'm mad about hate comments, okay? If you dislike my takes, that's fine. Everyone's wrong about something, excluding me. However, something I found particularly irksome was the reoccurring sentiment in the comments that I simply just don't get Relapse. Apparently, and this was news to me, Relapse is perfect, just the way it is, literally perfect. And that annoys me, because I can laugh off standard angry hate comments, but what I won't tolerate is someone trying to tell me that I don't understand something that I very clearly do understand.
Don't you feel silly? Don't you feel stupid? Don't you feel a little ashamed?
It's just crazy to me that someone can look at my channel, look at the 3.5 hour long analysis that I did of his music, the nearly 50-minute long video where I explain how I would rework some of his albums, and think, yeah, this guy, yeah, he's a new gen. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know anything about Eminem. I know more about Eminem than this guy does. This guy probably doesn't even know what friggin' the DJ Green Lantern mixtapes is. He probably doesn't even friggin' know what Infinite is. He probably hasn't even listened to the Slim Shady EP. He probably doesn't know what that is. He probably doesn't even— Shut up!
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
You all might have a hyperfixation for Eminem, but I do it way cooler and more interestingly than any of you clowns. And if I had a cartoon avatar, he would be folding his arms angrily right now. Now, I wanted to highlight this gentleman as an example. I could use a various number of words to describe what I think of this person, none of which would be particularly Christ-like of me to utter on a public video. But just know, whatever expletive just came into your head, I was also thinking.
No, we're not doing that. You're getting called a slut.
But something I found interesting about this comment in particular was how myself and the commenter had completely opposite perspectives on what Relapse and most likely Eminem's music as a whole should be. And that's fine, that's allowed. But what I can't begin to fathom is how somebody can click on a video called Fixing the Worst Eminem Albums, a video with Relapse in the thumbnail, and then be surprised when I change the track list of Relapse. Or Where's Stay Wide Awake? Why did you remove 3 AM? Same song and dance should have been the outro. Eminem is at his best when he's talking about raping with a while doing the iDubbbz botched European accent. Hey, so I actually don't agree, hence why I changed it. That's kind of the whole point of the video. I'd like to think that this is just standard brainlet internet commenter behavior, raving angrily because the person whose video they clicked on doesn't just parrot their own opinion back to them. I'd like to think that it's just that. However, I will admit that in the interest of not repeating myself too much from my review and ranking series, I probably did leave out a few details that clarifying may have cooled some tempers. And to all of those who politely asked why I left certain songs off, thank you. And for those of you who didn't,
I'm coming after you.
There was also quite a lot of debate sparked among people in the know regarding recording dates of Encore. What I learned from the comments and from discussions with people in the M-Ball community is that Encore leaked very early into its production. Encore, according to these people, wasn't some finished project that tragically leaked and then was scrambled together and retooled in the last minute. Apparently, it was kind of a loosey-goosey project from the word go, with a lot of re-up songs being Encore throwaways. This is coming from people who apparently know the exact date and time each song was recorded and the color of the t-shirt Eminem was wearing when he recorded it and what he ate for breakfast that day, so I'm inclined to believe them because they seem to know what they're talking about. So I guess I'll just take the L in acting like my version of Encore was in any way a realistic construction of the otherwise scrapped track list. Every day's a school day, right guys? We love learning here on the AshMV channel. Then there was a separate group of people who decided to use the comment section of my video to compare autism diagnoses and argue about my song choices, as if this whole thing wasn't just supposed to be a fun little thought experiment.
AshMV, When I'm Gone came out in 2005, not 2004.
Yes.
And Stepping Stone was recorded in 2018 because it was on the 2018 Kamikaze album, so how can it be on the 2017 Revival album? Is Eminem a time traveler?
No.
Actually, he recorded the Kamikaze hook in 2014 and has had the beat since 2007. No, actually, he's had the beat since 2003.
Actually, Smack You was never going to be on Encore because it was actually for a Revival equation.
Yes, I know. I acknowledged that in the video.
Stop it, please, I beg you!
Now, I love learning just as much as everyone else. But if your takeaway from my video was that everything about my remakes checks out, except for the fact that Marshall Powers was a Kamikaze throwaway, ergo should be on the Kamikaze track list, not the Death of Slim Shady track list, even though thematically it makes way more sense on my version of T-DOS, and actually arguably contradicts the thesis of Kamikaze, I just like to remind you that this is all just for fun. I don't know why people decided to take my proposals so seriously, but they did. So as I wrap up this rant and prepare to move on to the next segment of the video, I'd just like to remind you all of a few things. 1. This is all just a bit of fun. Don't take it too seriously. 2. I love Eminem and don't make any of these changes out of hatred, but out of personal preference and a desire to tell stories in an unconventional way. 3. I have controversial Eminem opinions, and that's okay. People are allowed to disagree on things. I don't have nostalgia for his music, so all of my perspectives have been formed within the last 5 years, meaning anyone who thinks that I'm biased towards his old work or his new work, you're wrong, please shut up indefinitely. 4. The edits that I have put in the Google Drive in the description are proof of concepts. If you're mad that I used a YouTube to MP3 converter instead of driving to Eminem's house and stealing the raw stems and recreating each song in studio quality like Joe Strange, then see the aforementioned cry about it. 5. I chose not to convert my edits into FLACs or MP3s, basically just to save time. If this upsets you, I don't know what to say, not my problem. And finally, number 6, if I cut your favorite song from one of these projects, please know that I did that to piss you specifically off. And the only way to prove my decision wrong is to yell at me angrily in the comments about why Seduction from Recovery is actually the greatest piece of music in the history of musical composition and not a corny, uninspired piece of drivel. And with that out of the way, let's hear what Unscripted Mike has to say. What is up guys, Unscripted Media Review Mike here. What a weird feeling. I'm behind the microphone, but I don't have a script in front of me. I'm gonna have to wing it. crazy. Bit of an experiment. It's been a very long time since I did anything sort of unscripted on a large scale like this. Obviously, I throw in little rants and tangents that are unscripted here and there, but I don't think since the debut of the Media Review Mike character with the Dead Plants video that I've done a video unscripted. So this will be fun. Today, you read the title, we're fixing the rest of the Eminem albums. I'm not including Infinite or the Slim Shady EP. If you expected me to do that, go outside, go kiss some girls, touch some grass, go to church. I don't know, but you gotta get off the internet, buddy. So yeah, enough faffing around. You've already sat through enough preamble. Let's jump into the first edit. Here we have the Slim Shady LP. So it is 2 tracks shorter than the original, and the only things I've really cut are a couple of songs. As far as songs and skits that were cut, I cut the bitch skit, the lounge skit, and My Fault got merged into one track. I cut the soap skit, I cut As the World Turns, and I think that's it. So I don't remember what my original ranking looked like, but I re-listened to As the World Turns after re-listening to the whole album, and it probably is my least favorite song on the project. So it's gone. Bye-bye. So I'll talk you through the edits I've made. As with the previous video, all of these are linked in the description. We open with the public service announcement skit like in the original. Go into My Name Is. I didn't think to cut in the dirty version with the my English teacher wanted to have sex in junior high, and the problem is my English teacher was a guy. I didn't add that version just because I didn't think to, and it's occurring to me now. I probably could have, but I don't think it matters that much. The Guilty Conscience MTV version, I'm referring to the original version of Guilty Conscience that has a hook, and I really like it, and I'm using it. And then we go from Brain Damage into the Paul skit with Just Don't Give a Frederick. I like this sort of transition because it's, you know, Paul basically saying, hey, can you turn it down? Can you tone things down a little bit, Marshall? And then the next song is Just Don't Give a Flip. And then we go into the Mummy interlude. I basically just cut the intro from 97 and Bonnie and Clyde and made that its own skit because it's always bothered me that it's part of the song because it's very long and you can't skip it. I don't like it when the beginnings of songs have little skits or interludes. I don't mind it if it's at the end because you can always skip it. Like I listen to Blame Game off of Dark Fantasy and I always skip the little Yeezy Taught Me outro because it's cringe. But with Bad Meets Evil and 97 Bonnie and Clyde, I can't do that without skipping the whole song. So they're gone. That takes us into Role Model because I like that sort of transition going from that sort of horrible, horrifying song into like a silly song where he's like, yeah, I'm a role model. Do exactly what I tell you. Kill your wife. I think that's funny. My version of Bad Meets Evil has the intro and outro removed. I don't like the intro and outro. It derails the song. So now it's just kind of a short little 2.5 minute song with Royce 5'9" on it. Ken Kniff skit, that transitions into Come On Everybody. I'm Shady transitions sonically really well from Come On Everybody. I don't remember if that was how it was on the original, but I don't think so. I will say, I didn't know that the hook was interpolated. But it is. It's from like, it's from an older song. I can't remember what it's called now, but I saw it in an Instagram reel, and I was like, where do I know this hook from? And then I was like, I got mushrooms, I got acid, acid tablet. Oh, this is I'm Shady. Yeah, it's a good song. People are sleeping on it. My Fault and the Lounge skit, I've merged into one. I like it. If I Had is exactly the same, except I've shortened the outro quite significantly because he just yaps on that intro and it's really annoying. Kind of like what I'm doing right now. I put Murder Murder from the Slim Shady EP on here because I really like it and I think that it's one of his strongest songs, and I didn't want to just like replace this whole album and make it the Slim Shady EP bonus version, but I think Murder Murder makes a lot of sense on this project, and I think that it kind of takes us into the more serious stretch. Another thing you'll notice with my sort of edits is that they kind of follow a similar formula of whatever the tone of the album is meant to be is how it starts, and then I usually shift into whatever the opposite tone is. So for example, with Encore, it's got a very serious tone, so the lighter songs are kind of towards the middle, and so we go serious, lighthearted, serious again. And similarly here, because the Slim Shady LP's got a very lighthearted tone, I've got kind of the less serious songs at the start, and then it gets a bit more serious with Murder Murder, Rock Bottom, If I Had, all that. And finding songs that you can do that with, you can make that transition, is quite fun. Like My Fault is a nice middle ground between lighthearted party song, and like, oh, like he's just killed this woman. Like, he feels responsible for her death. And that kind of takes us into If I Had, which is a more serious song. Obviously, we still end with Still Don't Give a Philippines, because it's just perfect outro, obviously. And yeah, that's my version. Pretty similar to the original, just a few sort of minor edits, but the vision's basically the same. Moving on to the Marshall Mathers LP. So my version of the Marshall Mathers LP is pretty much exactly the same, with a few minor differences. I cut Amityville and replaced it with Renegade. And I just kind of reshuffled the track list. One sort of notable thing is that all of the like censored lines on the album, and this is the same with the Slim Shady LP and all of the projects that I talk about in this video, they've been uncensored. I understand like the label forcing him to censor certain lines, and him even just like morally feeling the need to censor certain lines. Like, he couldn't say the line, "Your attorney Freddie Gibbs is a silly cigarette word" on the album for like legal reasons, but I don't care. This is a thought experiment. If you're looking at the structure of the track list, it's very similar to the formula that I described earlier. We kind of have a long stretch of sillier songs, and then we kind of get a bit darker in the tone leading up to Criminal, which is a bit of a middle ground. I put the Real Slim Shady further towards the start because obviously it's the lead single. It's kind of meant to be a hook. I've never liked Stan so early on the album, especially it transitioning into Who Knew. Because Who Knew is basically just him going, well, I didn't know you guys were gonna take what I said so seriously. And while that ties into the idea of Stan, and I get where his head was at, structuring it like that, I prefer Stan transitioning into Marshall Mathers because I think that the lyrics on the hook of Marshall Mathers, the "I'm just Marshall Mathers, I'm just a regular guy, I don't know why all the fuss about me," I think that really ties in with the ending of Stan. I can see him thinking, well, you know, I'm just Marshall Mathers. Why is anyone this obsessed with me? I think it flows better than going into the Paul skit and then Who Knew, because I think his very blasé attitude on Who Knew, it kind of undercuts the poignancy of Stan as a song. Another notable change is that I changed the title of Kim to So Wrong. I guess it just sits better on my conscience with that song's title not being the name of the woman it's about. So yeah, I did that. And that's my version. I think it's pretty good. I like the sort of intro run. I think Under the Influence really is like the only weak spot, and even then it's not as bad as the weak spots on other albums. And I said in my original video that the Marshall Mathers LP is my second favorite album. I'd retract that. If I could go back, I'd probably make the Eminem Show my number 2 pick. That album has legitimately gone from being like my 7th favorite album to being my 2nd favorite album. It just keeps getting better every time I listen to it. But the thing with the Marshall Mathers LP is that it really is just an album that I forget how much I like until I listen to it. And this version, I think, is just a bit tonally and sonically easier to stomach. And so that's that. Moving on to the Eminem Show. This was a fun one because I got to include Everybody's Looking at Me, which I think is a really good album opener. Now, this was a difficult decision because White America is one of the best album openers of any of his projects. However, I think that thematically, for what the Eminem Show is as a project, as a body of music, Everybody's Looking at Me makes more sense. It is really the thesis statement of the Eminem Show. Everybody's looking at me. I have no privacy. I'm always under the spotlight. It's literally what's being depicted on the album cover. And it's a really great song, and so I've made it the opening track. And that means I've moved White America after Square Dance. It's not the cleanest transition in the world, but it doesn't have to be. And the only other major change is that Drips and When the Music Stops are gone. They are out of here. So Everybody's Looking at Me has replaced Drips, and No Apologies has replaced, I literally just said the title and I've already forgotten it, the D12 one. When the Music Stops. When the Music Stops and D12 as a whole, they're just not for me. And I kept Under the Influence. because Devil's Night was releasing the next year, so it made sense to have D12 on the album. But I think this version, it does mean there's no Obi Trice, it does mean there's no D12, but I can live with that if it means that the album's a 10 out of 10. And for a lot of people, the original Eminem show is a 10 out of 10, but now I think it is legitimately a perfect body of music. I don't think there's a single bad song on this whole track list, and I think it flows a little bit more nicely than it does originally. So yeah, let's move on to Curtain Call. This was a last minute thing because I realized that I plucked When I'm Gone off of Curtain Call and put it on Encore, so I needed to fix that. So it's basically exactly the same, except now Love You More is on there, and I think that's it. And Superman's on there. I don't remember what song. I know I cut Just Lose It. I don't remember what the other song I cut was. But yeah, so Like Toy Soldiers is now like the new song on the album, and then basically everything else is the same. And then moving on to the deluxe edition, Stan's mixtape, I included Please 2 off of the Mathers LP because it's just a phenomenal song. Purple Pills, because it's kind of, when I think Devil's Night, I think Purple Pills. I'm fairly sure it was the lead single, and I think a bit of D12 representation makes sense. Dead Wrong's not a good song in my opinion. I know that's gonna piss off an ungodly amount of people, but I really don't care. That song is so overrated. So I chucked it on there anyway for you guys. And then I threw on What's the Difference? It was either that or Forgot About Dre, and I thought, what's the difference is probably, probably makes a little bit more sense than Forgot About Dre, because Forgot About Dre is kind of, it's literally got Dre in the title, so I think What's the Difference? It makes a little bit more sense. Mockingbird, just because I thought it belonged on the project somewhere, and then Just Don't Give a Friendly as the outro. I probably could have thrown Infinite on there. Pretend that I threw Infinite on there as a hidden track, why not? Now let's move on to Recovery, which is probably one of, if not my favorite edits I've made. So, we start off with Session 1, which I have retitled to I'm Right Here. I asked around and did a bit of research to see if anyone's ever tried to add Joe Budden to the song with like a different verse he's done. I couldn't tell you a single Joe Budden song, so I don't know which you could do that with, like BPM wise. If somebody wants to do that and send it to me, I will update my edit of Recovery. But yeah, right now, I'm Right Here is the new Recovery intro because it establishes that he's kind of at a concert, he's kind of doing a performance, his first sort of sober performance, and that ties into the outro of Untitled. In terms of songs that I cut, there are a few, and they are all now on the deluxe edition, which is on the next slide, so I won't go through them now. But I'm Right Here transitions into Cold Wind Blows, Talking to Myself into On Fire, Riders from On Fire, because they're both kind of Dre production. I plucked Fame off of The Return of the Dozen Volume 2, because I think that it kind of fits in with the thesis. I just knocked my table. It kind of fits in with the thesis of Recovery as a project, kind of being back. I've always thought Recovery is kind of like an Eminem show too. Not that it's on the same caliber of the Eminem show, not even, I think it's even really frankly in the same conversation as the Eminem show in terms of how iconic it is. Maybe if it had better production it would be, but I think in how grandiose it is and what a statement it is and a testament to how far he's come, I really do think that Recovery is his Eminem show too. And I think that Fame is a very Eminem show-esque song. Again, not down to the production, but in the lyrical content. And I think that it's nice to kind of be like, hey, I've not forgotten about D12, even though he kind of had, but a bit of plausible deniability. Almost Famous, No Love, 25 to Life, Going Through Changes, Cinderella, Man, Spacebound, Airplanes, featuring Royce to 5'9". That was an edit done by Jace. Very good friend of the channel. I've spoken to them twice ever. And I heard their version of Airplanes, and I don't know what the Royce verse is from. I don't know if it's from a remix or a separate song, but it's great. And I figured, hell, the sequel comes out in 2011, Recovery comes out in 2010, so Airplanes kind of preempting the Bad Meets Evil project. I originally had Echo on here, but then I thought, no, Airplanes makes more sense once I found Jace's edit. Then obviously Love the Way You Lie's on there. Can't have that. Can't have Recovery without Love the Way You Lie. And our new outro, Not Afraid. Having a single as the outro song, while not unheard of in this alternate universe, obviously the lead single for my version of Encore would have been the song Encore. I don't know if I would have had Not Afraid as a lead single in this alternate universe. Maybe No Love. Potentially Cinderella Man could have been or Airplanes, I don't know. But Not Afraid, I think, is a better outro than You're Never Over, especially because You're Never Over sucks. So it's gone. And then obviously we have Untitled, the hidden track. And moving on to the deluxe edition, these are basically just all of the cut songs and Forever, because I removed Forever from both versions of my Relapse, like Relapse and Relapse 2. I plunked it on here because his verse on that song is very transition-y between the Relapse sound and the Recovery sound. It's got the mixing of Relapse in the way that he's not layering his vocals, but he's got that sort of Recovery era growl in his voice, and lyrical content is very Recovery era. So I threw it on there. Another, just a big song to have on your album. And I also chucked the Despicable freestyle on there, because why not? And that would be a sort of whatever you want it to be. 10-year anniversary, celebration, 20th anniversary, doesn't matter. Basically just, hey, wow, look at all these vaulted songs that, very good. Oops. Moving on from Recovery, we have the Marshall Mathers LP2, which was my favorite one to remake because it's my favorite Eminem album. I am so glad that of all of his albums to have like a ridiculously long deluxe edition, it's this one, because I really had a lot of fun kind of piecing together my own version of the project. So, Bad Guy, into Parking Lot skit, yes. Rhyme or Reason, I threw a question mark onto the title because it's probably the most autistic thing I'm going to say in the video, but I like the idea of Rhyme or Reason's title being a question. Should I rhyme or should I be reasonable? And that's kind of what the song's about. So I did that. Brainless is on there. I like that towards the start of the album. Survival, I actually retitled to This Is Survival because the original title was This Is, and then he changed it to Survival. But I like This Is Survival, so we're doing that. Richard featuring Obi Trice, great song, slept on song, and kind of chucks an extra rap feature on here, which the only other one is Kendrick Lamar, so I think that's fair enough. Everything transitions pretty cleanly. Berserk, Rap God, Groundhog's Day, they all flow really nicely into each other. And then we got Legacy, Asshole, The Monster being the sort of slower, not that Asshole's a slow song, but it's kind of like the more reflective part of the album. Then we get So Far and Love Game, and not much to say there. And then we have Fine Line and Die Alone. I love those songs, they're from Shady 15, and yeah, they're on here. Die Alone is our Stronger Than I Was replacement, and Fine Line just kind of makes sense. It's very sort of introspective, he shouts out the outsiders, which, again, for a project that's kind of reflecting on his career, I think it makes a lot of sense. More so than So Much Better. And then basically, same as before, Headlights into Evil Twin, and then Eviler Twin, the hidden track. It's just the Ken Kniff skit. I don't like that the Ken Kniff skits are like attached to their outro songs. I don't like it when they do that, purely from a streaming perspective, because in Evil Twin's case it's fine because the Ken Kniff skits removed on the deluxe edition, so my version of Evil Twin on my playlist is just the deluxe version. But if I want to listen to Wicked Ways, then I've got to like actively skip the outro, and it just bums me out. So I made it a hidden track and I called it Eviler Twin to kind of imply that Ken Kniff is Eminem's evil twin. And then for the deluxe edition, it's basically just what I would consider to be the best sort of songs from this era that aren't on there. I kept it to 8 tracks because that's what the original deluxe edition was. A lot of these are gone. There's no Desperation, there's no Beautiful Pain, there's no Guts Over Fear. Thought about Detroit versus Everybody, but I ultimately decided against it because I like So Much Better. I don't like it more than Detroit versus Everybody, but I want to keep as many of the original songs as I can. And I think that Stronger Than I Was is the only song that doesn't deserve... I think Stronger Than I Was is the only Mathers LP2 song that deserves to be vaulted. So yeah, we got Wicked Ways, So Much Better, Baby, Right For Me from Shady 15, Ritz, which was part of the Straight From The Lab 3 leaks, and is just a great song, Don't Front, and then I got 2 freestyles in the Symphony and H freestyle, and the 2013 Rhapsody a cappella freestyle that he did, which I've just given the title Return of the Aether. Yeah, sick. Well done, me. Let's move on. Music to Be Murdered By. Now I know what you're thinking, Mike. Why so short? Why is the track list so short? I'm gonna give you a little sneak preview. Ooh, what was that? Oh, is that another album? Folks, he's done it again. When is he gonna stop splitting Eminem projects into 2 different albums? When I die, that's when. So my version of Music to Be Murdered By is meant to be more horrorcore focused, and it blends songs from the deluxe edition and the original. So we've got Premonition, we've got the Alfred interlude. I've renamed all the Alfred interludes. So Coroner is the first one, because at the end of it he goes, until the coroner comes. Then we get Unaccommodating, You Gon' Learn, Darkness, Leaving Heaven, Never Love Again, Marsh, Little Engine, Lock It Up. I threw in Bang because I really like that song, and it's the edit that Joe Banana did that keeps the bridge but has the original leaked verse. And then we get Godzilla, No Regrets, and I Will, and then Don's Macabre outro. Wow, what a short body of music. How sad. I want every Eminem album to be 30 tracks long and 2+ hours. Media review, Michael. Why have you done this? And that's because, boom, Music to Be Buried By, another 15-track album. So we have the Thus Far intro, not the Thus Far intro from the original. This is actually an edit, and I don't have the guy's name, I apologize, I'll throw it on screen. But this guy took the original intro from Music to Be Murdered By, Side B, and merged it with Alfred's theme using like the linking connective tissue of the Funeral of a Marionette or something like that. The Alfred Hitchcock theme that Alfred's theme samples. And that's because for as much as I like Black Magic, it makes no sense as an album intro. So now the album intro is Alfred's theme, which makes a lot more sense. Then we got Book of Rhymes, great song. Gospel, which I've retitled to Till I Die, because he says gospel once on the whole song, where he goes, I'm alright till I die, on the hook. So that made more sense. He said in the Pol Pot interview that he recorded Guns Blazing and Gospel at the same time, pretty much, and that he felt that Gospel made more sense for Dre's project and that Guns Blazing made more sense on his. And I get where he's at with that, but Guns Blazing sucks, and Gospel, aside from how poorly it's mixed, is really good. So, it's on the album. Then we have Zeus, These Demons, Ya Ya, Backs to the Wall, which is Walkthrough. Really great song, and I like it when Eminem kind of puts on whoever the shady record artist at the time is. I am picturing this as like a 2021 release, with the previous one being a 2020 release. Then we have She Loves Me. This guy, again, forgot the name. It's credited in the video, in the edit. Found, I think it was on a leak. It was this like leaked Alfred Hitchcock sample of him talking about how like the best murders are domestic, and it was, people have speculated, meant to be the original intro to Stepdad, and so it's here. So that gives us our transition into Stepdad. Then we've got Moon Man and Slim, which is the adventures of Moon Man and Slim Shady, because on that song he goes, this is music to be murdered by your love, turn the volume up, I'm fired up like a blunt. And so I do think it was originally intended, he's either shouting out his new album, or this was intended for Music to be Buried By or Murdered By before it became a Kid Cudi song. And I wanted it on the project because I think it's a great song. Then we have The Flip, which was originally called Thus Far. It's basically the interlude between, before Discombobulated, which I've retitled to Back and Forth Part 2, because obviously for my version of Relapse 2, Back and Forth is on there. So in this alternate timeline, with the horrorcore of Music to be Murdered By and Buried By being a sort of spiritual successor to Relapse, he's got Part 2 to Back and Forth. It's random, it's weird. If this was the real timeline, I'm sure plenty of people would be wondering, why has he just randomly decided to rap on this beat again? Just don't think about it too much. I love Discombobulated and I want to keep it. And then, probably a controversial pick that's not going to make a lot of sense to people, but favorite is the outro. And my reasoning for that is because I think that it's probably the most underrated song on the side B, because while it's not the first time that he's personified the rap game as a woman, it is the first time that he's done it for the whole song, because obviously on 25 to Life there's the pretense of it being a plot twist at the end of the song, whereas on this he makes it pretty clear what he's talking about from the start. And I think that it has one of the best horror moments on the album, where he like cocks the gun and asks the rap game, would you marry me again now that everything has changed? And the way that he ends the song on like him basically just calling the rap game a bitch and shooting it, I think that's a cool way to end the album. This is one of those, you're just gonna have to listen to it to kind of see what I mean, but trust the plan. Plan not trusters will not survive. People who don't trust the plan won't get to see how objectively correct I am about this. So you're just gonna have to listen to the edit.
But not before you check out my personal track list for King Mathers. Wow. Now, before I talk about my version of King Mathers, I would like to correct a misnomer that is surrounding the Eminem community, that King Mathers ever had some sort of definitive track list. And look, maybe there was something approximating a track list towards the end, because if you do listen to the leaks, it's pretty clear that certain songs are designed to transition into each other. But whatever that track list looked like, we don't have enough songs leaked to piece together anything that actually resembles anything realistic. So when I'm trying to make a version of King Mathers, I'm basically just picking whatever songs were recorded between 2005 and 2008 and just kind of sticking them in an album like I would maybe construct a mixtape. Which is actually kind of fun, because you kind of get to play around with what kind of retirement album you would want from Eminem. And this is something that I would want. I'd want something reflective and dark and really kind of taking a step back to look at how far he's come, but ultimately recognize why he has to stop. So the album would open up with the My Darling intro skit. I've got, all sorts of names you could call this. Shady Lives, Return of the King, King Mathers skit, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. But it is just the My Darling skit that leaked on straight from the Lab 3. Then we'd have My Darling, which is, kind of him waking up from his hiatus, talking about modern rap, and then delving into the self-reflection of the album, with him having an internal battle about whether or not he should come back to the rap game, which takes us into Careful What You Wish For. Now this is the version of Careful What You Wish For that leaked. However, I am not including the intro or outro skit. I understand why they're there. In fact, I quite like them. However, for what I'm using this track for, it's not really necessary. This song exists to kind of inform the listener early on that this is in fact a retirement album. That takes us into Pistol Popping with Cassius, The Apple, and 50 Ways, which are all sort of general King Mathers inclusions. And then we have Devil's Music, which is the Antichrist skit, and then Antichrist itself, which I've retitled to the King of Hip Hop, for 3 reasons. 1, King of Hip Hop ties into the title of King Mathers. Very cool. 2, the original song's title is blasphemous, and I don't like it. And 3, it's a Michael Jackson diss track. Michael Jackson's referred to as the King of Pop, so this is a song called The King of Hip Hop. Very cool. Take It is a freestyle song thing about learning how to take a joke. And King of Hip Hop ends with Marshall trying to justify to Bizarre and, Satan, that he's just kidding. And I think they flow into each other nicely. Yeah, I Get Money remix is good. I don't think it makes sense on an album. Of course, at one point, King Mathers was meant to be a mixtape, so that kind of makes sense. And then we have Jace's radio skit, followed by Syllables, which is quite a good and cool song with lots of powerhouse features. Cut back after it, because the opening line on Cutback is a cut back in the syllables, and cut back on the syllables, ties into syllables. We like to have fun here. And then I would have Jace's Wake Up skit, and Duty, brackets difficult, featuring Obi Trice, obviously the Proof tribute. Then we get In My Shoes, which is the 2007 version of Beautiful, followed by the Hip Hop Shop interlude thing, which I've called The Good Old Days, followed by It's Been Real, which would be the sort of fake outro track where he tells everyone why he's leaving, gives his thanks, takes his final bow. But then there's the hidden track, GOAT, which would be his actual final statement, kind of reminding everyone that while yes, he is bowing out of the rap game, he is and always will be the GOAT. So that's my version of King Mathers. Someone asked me to make it. Do I think it's a great album? Still, no, not really. Maybe it's better than Revival if you squint, but probably not. I didn't include Emulate because I already have an Obi Trice feature on here with Difficult. I also didn't include I'll Hurt You because it's definitely more of a Busta Rhymes song than it is an Eminem song. But other than that, I think this takes all of the best stuff we have from the 2006, 2007 era and pieces together a halfway decent album. Of course, after I made my Fixing the 5 Worst Eminem Albums video, we got a new Eminem album. What? How crazy, I know. Which takes us into the Stan's soundtrack. Now, arguably, this is probably the worst project he's ever put out, and so I thought I would take it upon myself to piece it together, make a better version. So we'd obviously open with Stan featuring Dido, pretty self-explanatory, I think. That would take us into the Everybody's Looking at Me freestyle. So this would not be the album version, because this isn't a charity. I don't see why we need to be releasing new songs, especially after we promised multiple of them. So I think the freestyle version with Proof is a much better inclusion. Quite obviously. Then we could have Stan live at the 43rd Grammys. Stan, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then, one of the very few good inclusions on the original soundtrack was Stan live at Wembley 2014. Another, I think, must-have inclusion. Then I thought I'd throw on Stan live at BBC Radio, which was done in 2007 for the Revival rollout. And then I was thinking maybe they could have Stan featuring Ed Sheeran. Now, I know that's a bit of an out there inclusion, but if you think back to, I think it was 2022, Ed Sheeran was doing a tour, and when he was touring Detroit, Eminem made a surprise appearance and they performed Lose Yourself and Stan together. And so I think including Stan there would have been really good and cool. Then we could have Bad Guy. You know, I think that it makes a lot of sense because, you know, I think Stan, I think darkness, I think, you know, really sort of depressing and introspective, and I think Billie Eilish's sound really ties into that quite nicely. So I think in terms of having a thematic inclusion to the documentary about Stan culture, but also the song Stans, having one of the darkest pop songs ever written in Bad Guy by Billie Eilish is a really good inclusion. And then we have what I would consider to be the best sort of like track run in Eminem's entire history, with Stan Clean, and then the Stan instrumental, and then the Stan a cappella, and then the Stan Nightcore version, and then the Stan slowed and reverb, because, you know, people are making slowed and reverb edits all the time, may as well make it official, and then you can make money off of it. Paul Rosenberg, hit me up in the DMs. I've got so many business ideas. We could work together. We could be the best. And, you know, since I'm a giver and since I'm just a really smart guy, I thought I would also do a sort of potential deluxe edition, maybe like a physical release, give some of those unreleased songs that were promised to us. So I'm thinking we could open with Stan, but specifically the Curtain Call Hits version. So that's basically just the version of Stan that's on Curtain Call. And then we could maybe get like a Stan demo track. You know, I think that could be a really cool thing for the Stans to have a listen to. Then, of course, we'd have to have a DJ Green Lantern remix of Stan, because I think DJ Green Lantern always makes the best remixes. You know, you listen to the Just Lose It remix, and it's one of the best things ever made, and it really elevates the song. And then we could have the often speculated but never confirmed Stan 8-verse version. A lot of people heard an interview that Eminem did back in the 2000s where he said that Stan originally had 4 extra verses, where like Stan, you know, ends up in the hospital and then he's mad at Marshall and he goes and tries to kill Marshall again and then he fails. And, you know, a lot of people wrongfully thought that Eminem was joking and making fun of the interviewer for asking him a stupid question, but this is actually real. It's an actual real song. And Paul Rosenberg made him cut down the song because he was worried about how the baying mob would respond to a 25-minute song. Only the greatest rapper of all time, Dax, can make a 25-minute long song. He's the only one who can do that. And then I'm thinking we could have Stan live on SNL in 2000. I think that could be really cool. I didn't think of it, but you could probably also have Stu on here. The, what's his name? Pete Davidson, the Pete Davidson parody. You could have that on here as well, I guess. And then you could have Stan live from the 2000 Grammys a cappella. I think that'd be really cool. Hearing sort of isolated Elton John vocals could be really interesting. You could kind of put that over the original beat, and it's like, whoa, what if Elton John was originally on Stan instead of Dido? I think that'd be really neat. And then you could have Stan FTB remix, like they did with Infinite, for the Infinite 5-year anniversary. I think that could be really cool. And then Stan 25th Anniversary Edition. So that would be the version of Stan that's on the 25th Anniversary release capsule vinyl that they did. That didn't include the kids, which is on the original deluxe edition of the Marshall Mathers LP, which is one of Eminem's albums, actually. He also made the documentary, for those of you who don't know. And then I'm thinking we could get the Shady remix. So what they could do with that is they could like take the original Stan beat, but they could use like the Shady AI filter to make it sound like Eminem from 1999 or maybe 2003, depending on which one they feel like using. I think that could be really cool. And then we could probably get like an a cappella remix of the instrumental, so like Spiral Mouth or Pentatonics, you know, they could do a sort of and I can't see it even if I could. Get your picture on my wall. Reminds that it's not so bad. You could do something like that. And then we could have Stan, the Alvin and the Chipmunks version that was on the 2007 pornographic film Alvin and the Chipmunks version that Eminem actually starred in with Matthew Gray Gribwell. And then the Stan Mr. C remix, but I wouldn't want that to be on the vinyl release or the physical release. I just want that on streaming, like they did with Curtain Call. And then we could get like the Bad Guy instrumental. Like Eminem has a sequel to Stan called Bad Guy that not a lot of people know about. And I think it'd be cool if they put the instrumental on there, because it wasn't on the Marshall Mathers LP2 Deluxe Edition 10-year anniversary edition. I think it should have been, because they had like the Rap God instrumental, they had the Survival instrumental, they had the Headlights instrumental, and they had the Berserk instrumental, and I think some other ones. But it was that Bad Guy wasn't on there, and that's the best song on there, so it should have. And then he could do like a freestyle, I think, over the Stan beat. I think that could be really cool. Also like Stan, but specifically from when it's used in the Stan's soundtrack. So like, you know, they cut the lyrics out so people can talk over it. So it'd be like that on the album. And then Stan Marshall's version, so you know, because Marshall's not making enough money off of his music because his manager is like a greedy, jiggly blob of a man. I think that it would be cool if he like re-recorded it and released like Stan Marshall's version. That could be cool. And then like the dirty version of Stan, where instead of killing Marshall or trying to kill Marshall, Stan says, my English teacher wanted to have sex in junior high. The only problem was my English teacher was a guy. I think that could be good to give the fans. And then we could get the My Salsa instrumental. And then Stan Lives by Cannabis. I think that would really tie the album together. So those are my remakes of all of the Eminem albums that aren't Infinite in the Slim Shady EP, or the 8 Mile soundtrack, or all the other ones I didn't talk about. And guess what? I'm not gonna talk about those ones, so don't even bother asking. Yeah. This is why I script my videos. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please be sure to leave a like. And as always, this is Media Review Mike, signing out.
Eminem is at his best when he's talking about... I forgot I wrote this. Eminem is at his best when he's talking about